Aziz has a question. Or is there any dissent, councillors? Dissent? No? Councillor Aziz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do thank you immensely for allowing me the opportunity to speak, even though there is no dissent. And I think the last time this was raised, I expressed a frustration that we seem to have no powers in this area. And you rightly said, Madam Mayor, that these are not powers that we're seeking to target people who may be in a disadvantaged position. On the contrary, these are powers that we're seeking to target people who may live in Brighton but leave their commercial properties in our city derelict, knowing that they don't have to drive past these disasters every day and put up with them on a daily basis, as our residents do who live locally. And so it is absolutely wonderful that we have now discovered that we have access to teeth that can allow us to tackle these type of offenders head on. And what is even more exciting is the fact that we can deal more harshly with what I would call the recidivist offenders, the people that just offend again and again and again, which was entirely the case with this particular property in Hampton Park. I don't wish to amend the recommendation before us, but can I say, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me, and if you don't, please feel free to express your disagreement. I think it would be fair to say that given the meticulous planning that we apply to Casey every day, and the fact that all of us are in contact with residents who express their ongoing wish to live in a clean and beautiful city and take great pride in their neighbourhood, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that it is indeed the expectation of the elected council that the administration absolutely throws the book at anyone who basically chooses to do the wrong thing by their fellow residents. And again, Madam Mayor, I'm leaning on your undertaking or warranty, if you like, in this matter, that this is not about targeting anyone who's in a disadvantaged position. This is targeting careless individuals who choose to allow their properties to run down to that extent, and as a result cause absolute havoc and in some cases embarrassment and danger to their fellow residents. So if anyone disagrees with me that this is the political will of council, that the book is thrown at such individuals, please say so, but I'm reasonably confident that I speak on behalf of all of us in making that statement, Madam Mayor.
Well said, Councillor Aziz. Are there any questions? Councillors, before I ask for... Oh, Councillor Saray?
Just a quick question. You said before that you wanted to clarify that you didn't want it to be obviously residential. Should we say that in the title?
No. I didn't say I didn't want it to be residential. I was giving an example.
Oh, okay.
What I was saying was this is not something that we're going to use to strong-arm people that are struggling, and we do know people struggle. We don't want people in residences to feel that we're going to come in and throw the book at them. We'll work with them, and as we have done in the past. But in the case of Hampton Park, as you know, it was just blatant disregard, and we'd work with them. I think since before I started council, we were working with that shopping centre, and I just could not believe the state that it ended up in. And on that note, I just need to applaud Councillor Rosario, Councillor Smith, and our wonderful Miss Bell and your team. What fabulous work you've done. No one could believe that we would achieve the outcome that we did, but we did. And could I also acknowledge your community, Councillor Rosario? Fabulous support that we've had, and they've really advocated strongly for a place that they're so passionate about and they love. Thank you. Yep. Councillor Aziz.
Sorry, just quickly, Madam Mayor, just to allay Councillor Saray's concerns, and they're very valid ones. You know, when I've had complaints from residents about residential property, and I often refer them on to people like Mr. Jansen, it's often the case that they're not aware that they actually have a hard rubbish collection available to them. And so a simple phone call and the booking is made, and they're shown how to do that by phone call or through the internet, often resolves the issue. The ones we're concerned about are the people that were operating in Hampton Park. That's the profile of offender that this type of reform is targeting.
Thank you, Councillor Aziz. And just to add, I'm not sure whether it was in which term of council it was, but we had a lovely man who was best known as a hoarder and was on TV, and we actually went in and helped him. So that's the kind of council we are. We're a caring council, but we're not pushovers either. We care about our community more than we do people who want to disregard the local law. So, Ms Bell, could you please extend our thanks to your team. Thank you for the work that you've done, and Councillor Rosario, congratulations. Are there any further questions? Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Moving on to consideration of reports of committees, is there a mover and seconder to receive and note the record of Assembly of Councillors as listed? Is that moved by Councillor Costani, seconded by Councillor Jackson, our two deputy mayors. Moving on to petitions. Are there any petitions or joint letters that councillors wish to present? That being the case, we'll move on to, we have no notices of motion. I'm sure that Mr Patterson would be very pleased with that. And we're moving on to items of urgent business. Do we have any items of urgent business? Councillor Aziz, what's your reason for your item of urgent business, please?
Mayor, I move that this item be admitted into urgent business because it relates to community safety.
So moved by yourself, seconded by myself. Thank you. And if we could just seek your wisdom on wording.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And can I assure the very capable minute taker that once we have artificial intelligence in Casey,
this won't be happening.
We'll never have to put up with this. So anyway, I just want to move that Councillor Wright to the Honourable Lisa Neville. In her capacity as the State Minister for Police.
Put it up and they can see it's happening. We'll get through, we'll do the tidy it up later.
That's about the extent of what I had to say meaningfully, but no, I'm only kidding. Okay. To advise that Casey is interested in commencing a collaboration project with the state government to leverage off current smart city technology that is being deployed to provide an enhanced level of assurance for community safety in matters where the state government has jurisdiction. Next paragraph. The council informs the minister in that correspondence
Informs the minister in that correspondence.
that it is willing to work with any state agency relevant community organisations as well as industry partners to achieve this goal which may include providing 000 emergency call protection
Providing 000. 000, yep. Emergency call protection.
Actually, can you say instant 000 emergency call protection? So if you insert the word instant before 000, to female residents in particular who may be in situations of distress in the public domain. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Aziz. Councillors, this is before us, so moved by Councillor Aziz, seconded by Councillor Rosario. Would you like to introduce Councillor Aziz?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I was deliberately being cryptic as well as general in my articulation of this urgent business motion. And the reason being is that I really don't want to predictate any outcomes from this process. I think we should actually all go to a clean whiteboard and identify opportunities of leveraging against the current technology that we're deploying, for example, in the smart barbecue or the smart park bench space, to give our residents communication capability to access emergency services and also respite services in instances where they're needed. And obviously this is a matter which has been discussed in many media forums and public forums as well, given the recent and most unfortunate spate of attacks on women in particular, and has raised the question of, how do we protect those citizens in situations like this where the attacks often take place in the dark. It is very difficult for a woman to reach for her mobile phone to dial 000 and activate an emergency and activate a response. Can you imagine a situation where some of our residents, some of our female residents, if they want to, can actually carry a handheld device that then, with the press of a single button, instantly activates the Wi-Fi and communication technology available now in our parks and will be available in our parks, to then call 000. And can you imagine in that same situation where the technology is such that the signal that is sent not only makes a 000 call, but provides data on the location of the victim, through current global positioning system technology, which we all now have in our cars and our mobile phones. It's remarkable how far the technology has come, and it would be absolutely shameful if we as a local municipal government don't use every opportunity of that technology to provide as much of a safety assurance as possible to our residents, particularly in these very dark times where the attacks seem to be repetitive and they seem to carry the same characteristics and profile. So, as you know, Madam Mayor, we're deploying the smart barbecue. It's great to offer residents a barbecue that never breaks down. And also in some of our more socio-economically disadvantaged areas, we're also deploying the smart bench top, which allows residents, as they're sitting down and reading a novel or, eating an ice cream or whatever, to actually access free Wi-Fi on their mobile device, which is basically all part of Casey's strategy to evolving into a smart city over the next 10 years. But let's take the opportunity one step further and let's see if we can work with our state government partners to also utilise the same technology to provide safety for residents. Can you imagine, Madam Mayor, and particularly as we approach winter, if there is a homeless person on a particularly very cold winter's night, and we've only hit winter about 4 days ago, but the temperatures have been unbelievable. Anyone that speaks of global warming, I reckon, must have rocks in their heads, because it's even snowing in Queensland, Madam Mayor. Can you believe that? Yeah, so the weather patterns are proving to be very challenging for some of our less fortunate residents who don't have a home to go to. We're all fortunate enough in this room to have a warm home to go to every day, whereas many of our residents sleep on the street. And so can you imagine a resident who might have, some serious medical condition that the cold is only going to exacerbate and possibly, God forbid, lead to their death, like pneumonia or something. Can you imagine a resident having, at the press of a button, being able to call a number and speak to someone that can then talk them through what they're experiencing and then send a response, send a respite response? Nothing can be more humanitarian, Madam Mayor, and it's a really, really important extension of the vision that we have for our city in being a smart city. Smartness in a city is not just about having the latest technology and having robotics and having all these wonderful things out there that are going to make the lives of residents more enriched, but it's also about looking at the disadvantaged members of our community and seeing how we can utilise exactly the same technology for their well-being and their welfare. It's an exciting initiative, and I sincerely hope that the state government will come on board, and maybe even the city of Casey in that regard, given that smart cities are becoming a bit of a buzzword around Australia. Maybe, just maybe, once again, we can then become a test case or a pilot for the rest of Australia to follow. I keep saying this, and I'll say it again tonight. We seem to have adopted this mantra in Casey that, as Pericles said of the Athenians, we do not imitate, but we are a model to others.
Hear, hear, Councillor Aziz. Thank you very much. Councillor Crestani, do you have a question?
I have a question, thanks. First of all, I just want to, are you aware that this actually really addresses an issue about violence against women too? So I think that's an added bonus in there, and I really appreciate Councillor Aziz for you adding that in. I just want to mention a couple of things, or ask actually the first question. So in relation to the resource management for, now I believe you'd actually flagged that there would be an activation of a CCTV camera so that you could see who's actually pressed a button. So just in relation to how resource management would occur when you've got kids around playing with it, or if someone is just perhaps misusing it in any sort of way. So that would address that. That's how this is going to be addressed. And just before I sit down, because I won't get up again necessarily, these days they... It won't. It's just an are you aware that you mentioned about global warming, but these days they call it climate change and they're both rocks on the head sort of stuff. Thanks.
Councillor Aziz. Oh, sorry, and I'll come back to Councillor Flannery. Sorry about that.
Look, thank you very much, Councillor Crestani. It is a very important question, an excellent one. I haven't really sort of worked in my mind the logistics of how this would work, but I imagine the way that it would work is that if you were to want to have one of these devices, it would pretty much be signed out to you. So the device would have a way of coding itself back to your identity. And so if you misuse it, the police will know who to come and look for. And you may risk having the device confiscated if you're actually misusing it, because you'd be then wasting police resources that could be used in real emergencies.
Or you could end up with emergency housing that you didn't anticipate.
Indeed, indeed. And so, you know, there is technology these days to actually have this occur. And the issue of security cameras, again, I deliberately left that out of the motion, because I'm not a surveillance expert, and so I can't, again, dictate an outcome that may or may not be feasible. However, I'm hoping that if we get a collaborative committee together, they can look at the possibility that as soon as the device is activated, that we may have surveillance cameras in some of our parks that would then start operating, and particularly infrared cameras that can then operate in the dark and pick up vision in an otherwise poorly lit area that can then be used to provide the police with the evidence they need to prosecute a crime. Again, all of this is up in the sky kind of thinking, and it really needs the experts to have a look at it. But there obviously be the usual ethical questions about protecting people's privacy and so on. But I guess, you know, these attacks don't happen in the middle of the daytime when there is a few people standing around, because generally the cowards that commit these attacks are opportunists that wait for the victim to be alone. And so it's very important that we utilise every piece of technology and run down every borough of opportunity possible to achieve the outcome of community safety. But all the questions you raise are perfectly valid. They just need to be considered by experts, not by us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Crestani. Councillor Flannery, do you have a question?
Just are you aware, Councillor Aziz was away overseas and on smart cities, and I appreciate what he mentioned about homeless people, because while he was away, I tried to help a homeless person and tried to get him some accommodation. And even though Councillor Aziz said about having a buzzer for somebody to find accommodation for in an emergency, if someone's hypothermia or whatever and they need to get assistance, you know, I think that also we should also consider council's obligation with the state government to try and find better housing and or public buildings that we could utilise to put a roof over their head rather than have out in the park, and that would probably lower the rates of people dying or suffering hypothermia out in the park. So, you know, even though that's a great idea, but we also need to consider how we're going to go about trying to give them a roof over their head to stop them from this happening.
I agree with you, Councillor Flannery, and to assure you, Casey are really on top of this. We're getting a wonderful housing strategy together, and it is taking some time to plan for it. But even though we know this is a state government responsibility, we feel that we've got a part to play in it, and I think the outcomes will be good in the future. So what Councillor Aziz is talking about will build in beautifully when we've got a lot more housing available for our wonderful people in the community. Councillor Aziz.
Madam Mayor, if I can have just the right of reply to that statement, because it's an important one. I guess everything that we do is about layers of response. This is just one layer of response. The other layer of response is what Councillor Flannery has alluded to, which is having enough housing to absorb our homeless population. But it is absolutely critical when we do these things, and that's why I ensured that the word jurisdiction is clearly front and centre of this particular urgent business, is that we don't give people false hope. We don't give them an impression that it's actually something that council can resolve when council is neither resourced financially nor equipped legislatively to deal with this issue. So what we need to do is continue advocating every day to the state government, and we need to make sure that our own behaviours don't convey a sense that this is a problem that we're going to solve tomorrow, because we won't. Because these people, I can assure you, need no further disappointment. They need to be assured and they need to be supported in every way, but they cannot be given false hope on any given day, Madam Mayor.
No, thank you, Councillor Aziz. All right, Councillor Ablett.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. I just want to applaud Councillor Aziz for that level of safety. I know there are other levels of accommodation which go hand in glove, because I was approached by a couple of homeless gentlemen, young guys, this week, and managed to find one of them some temporary accommodation for about 6 weeks with somebody I know. But the number one fear for men, I haven't been spoken to too many females, but I know is fear. You've been watching the news, it's horrific. But is safety. Am I safe? Because most of them are isolated and they're on their own, they're not in a group. And these guys felt isolated, they didn't know anyone, and they felt frightened in the night. So cold and all the other things, the basic needs we have, number one is safety. So I want to applaud Councillor Aziz. And the second thing, as you pointed out, Madam Mayor, is somewhere to be safe, some sort of accommodation that Casey's working on. So there are layers, but the button for Help Me would be a huge success and would be applauded by the people I spoke to and have spoken to, and you've spoken to heaps too, Madam Mayor, would be a great idea, because every corner they go around at 2 a.m. in the morning, they don't know who's there, and if they see somebody, they go the other side of the road. They're hiding to feel safe, and that's what they approached me about. And I actually feel a little bit helpless at the moment, of feeling to do more, and Council is working overtime to do more, and we have to work in with the state. And as you laid out, there is a good plan going forward. So the button idea, I fully applaud. Having spoken to these guys this week, they absolutely feel unsafe during the middle of the night if they're on their own. Thank you.
I love the heart of this, Council, and I really do applaud. I congratulate your words, Councillor Ablett, and I applaud you, Councillor Aziz. That was a fantastic item of urgent business. I'll put this to my fellow councillors. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Are there any other items of urgent business? Well, that ends our council meeting, and can I congratulate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your input and for your wonderful ideas, and thank you so much to the gallery for being with us again tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next council meeting. And I don't believe we've got anything else after this, have we, Ms Frost?
No.
No. So that's the end of our council meeting. Thank you and good night.